Rodrigo, in your mind, is culture something that is a quick fix, something that you can do pretty easily and interject into the company, or is it a long-term effort?
Culture is not a quick fix, and it's not something that you can do or change overnight. It's certainly something that takes time, effort, intentionality, and alignment. And it's something you have to work on every single day, not just you, but your entire core leadership team, and setting the vision and understanding what good looks like. But it's consistently working at that day in and day out.
So, is this the kind of thing that gets set from your level, from the CEO on down? Is this something that comes from the bottom up? How does culture get set?
Culture gets set, in my opinion, the definition of what good looks like from the top down. Now, how that shows up in the business, it takes everyone. And it's our job as leaders to understand what is the standard that we set. And then we have to hold that standard day in and day out. But to me, it starts at the top, and the accountability has to start there as well.
A lot of things define culture. One of the things you and I were talking earlier, and one of the things that you mentioned was that this idea of not having within the company a fear of failure or I'm going to be in trouble for making a decision. You want people to be empowered. You want the psychological safety for people to be able to say, I'm going to make the right call on the spot. And you had an interesting story about that I'd love to hear.
Yeah. Our role as leaders is to create that environment where people do feel safe and empowered to make decisions based off our values and what is right for our customers and our stakeholders, and also what's right for our clients. A lot of times, especially people not in a leadership role, are scared to make those decisions and they have to go back and ask for permission. I recall a situation where we had a recruiter working with one of our key customers, and we spend a lot of time earning the trust of the client and this customer, and they gave us a very critical role. It was a direct hire role, and unfortunately the person didn't work out shortly after we placed them. And that's certainly not the experience that we want to give either to our candidates and or our customer. And that recruiter had two choices in that moment. One, they could have said, you know what, sorry, that's part of the business. It's not in our contract to replace this person and walk away. Or do the right thing based on our values and based on who we are and what's right for the customer. And oh, by the way, not only later on after they went on and asked for permission, because that time that goes by and start creating this experience for our customer. But they took the opportunity to make the decision right then and there to say, you know what, regardless of what our contract said, the right thing to do is for me to offer you a replacement, and we're going to work on it, and we're going to prioritize it, and we're going to make sure that the promise that we made you when you gave me this business, I will fulfill it regardless. And that's what they did. And to me, that left a very lasting experience. And not only for our customer, but our recruiter felt so empowered to make that choice, to make that decision, absence of fear. And I think that's the culture that, by definition, that we want to create.
And how did that impact that particular relationship with that customer?
You know, I think the client, I believe the client, what they really appreciated is that we were action oriented, we are biased to action. We were able and to make a decision what was right based on their experience, regardless to the contract. So to me, that created loyalty, that created a valuable experience that they continue on. And by the way, they're still a customer now as a result of that. And oftentimes it's not about all the great experiences that we have while we create some, sometimes it's going through hard stuff together that creates more of that stickiness.
And did that send a message internally too? Because I'm sure that was a story that was then retold and people found out about internally. What message did that send to everyone else in the company?
I think the message that sent to the rest of the company was pretty loud and clear, that regardless of your tenure, regardless of your psychological size, regardless of your remit and your title in the organization, we are fostering a culture where people feel empowered to make the right decisions and not have to run and make and ask for permission every single time. And they felt safe. And I think that behavior permeates across the organization to say, you know what, if this person was able to do it and there was no retaliation, no fear. And Gary Ridge says this a lot. He says, there's not mistakes that happen, they're learning moments. And that certainly was a learning moment for everyone. And if we treat it that way, it will certainly create a culture of being biased to action and doing the right thing.
Fantastic. There's also another thing that Gary says, and that is that culture equals value plus behavior equals consistency. What does that mean to you?
That is one of my favorite things that I've read from Gary because so much of is in that quote in that sentence that is absolutely true. And if you start to remove any pieces of that, the culture are just words. So when you think about culture and being tied to growth as an organization, that's the operative word, in my opinion, is culture aligned with behavior and then doing that consistently over time. Because at the end of the day, what we say, it doesn't matter. It only matters what we do and what we do consistently. And so when we align our values to our behaviors, we close that gap between what we're saying and versus what we're doing. And they should always be aligned. And then the more you do that consistently, that's when it's type high performance, in my opinion.
So I want to ask you a two-part question. The first part is just on the overall importance of culture. And I'm going to have you rate it first, if you could, on a scale of 1 to 10. One, culture is not important at all to the company. We could care less. Culture, what is it? 10, it's vital to the long-term sustainable growth of Eastridge Workforce Solutions. Where do you put it on that scale and why?
Culture to me on a scale 1 to 10 in terms of importance to Eastridge and an organization for growth is a 10 plus. If I can rate it higher than a 10, I would. And the reason why is because it should, again, it should inform how we support our customers. It should inform how we make decisions internally. But the key piece, as I mentioned, is aligning your values to your behavior. But to me, it's critical and it's absolutely important. In fact, I believe Gary said this as well. Culture is not an initiative. Initiatives to me have a start and end. It's something you do fourth quarter. It's something you might do for a year. The operative word is that it's imperative, and that does not die. That's consistent. So that to me is why it's a 10 plus.
And if it's a 10 plus connected to the long-term growth of the business, how is it connected to the talent acquisition part of the business, specifically first for Eastridge? Is it an important part of how you bring in good people, high performance people that you want to be working at the company?
Culture is not only just important for us internally, but it certainly impacts how we support and our customers and our candidates alike, all our stakeholders reality. And the reason why is it's because at the end of the day, we are a recruiting and staffing acquisition. But we do not just fill requisitions. We do not just fill orders. Our goal is to be intimately familiar with your culture and making sure that we're aligning the talent to your organization equally, what's important for the candidate, but it's also equally important to you because that will create long-term success in that partnership. And if we get to understand your culture intimately and we're aligned with you from a cultures and a value perspective, that to me is an incredible partnership that will drive long-term results. And that's our goal is to truly understand your culture, align our candidates to that as well. What we believe is really important in a successful relationship between all our stakeholders internally and our candidates and our client is again, when we really understand the culture of the customer and what they're truly looking for beyond the resume, right? Beyond their technical experience. And then we also do the same thing with our candidates. We really want to understand what they're looking for a long-term partner in career and what's important to them, what goals are important to them, not only from a company perspective, but personally. When we match those two things together, it's an amazing thing. And it's important that we get both of those things. It's not just one or the other, because if we're missing one piece of that, it will not work. It will be temporary for sure. And the experience just won't be great. So aligning those two things together and creating that perfect match is really where the magic happens and what's truly important to us.
From my own personal experience with recruiting, culture has not typically always been an ingredient that is a part of that recruitment process. How much is that a competitive advantage in your mind for Eastridge in terms of how important company culture, understanding your client's company culture, screening for fit with company culture?
Aligning or understanding company culture is critical. And it wasn't always something that people talked about a lot or understood how to use this as a competitive advantage. I think for us internally, because we care so deeply about it and see how that creates high performance internally and the impact, we know that it's truly important. And it's part of our screening process, not only for our candidates, but also for our clients. If we get this wrong, that relationship won't last very long. So that's critical and it's important because what the candidate wants has to be aligned with the values of the culture of the organization. When there's a misalignment there will be a lot of disengagement, a lot of unhappiness. We know the ripple effect of that. That's going to be high turnover, attrition, impacts the rest of the organization. That ripple effect goes very long and wide. And our goal is to mitigate that as much as possible by creating alignment in culture.
So I want to make sure there was a quote that you talked about from Gary that I want to ask you about, which is it's not about you, it's about the people you have the privilege to lead. So let me ask the question. Rodrigo, you said early on that culture, it has to be something that the people live and embody and feel, but it has to be led from the top down. And Gary had a quote that said, it's not about you, it's about the people that you have the privilege to lead. What's your point of view on that?
Gary mentioned a quote that it's not about you as a leader, it's about the people that you have a privilege to lead. We talked earlier about culture really starting from the top down, but the reality is not just saying this is how we're going to operate and being a compliance driven conversation. It's not about us as leaders, as he said, it's about the people that we have the privilege, and that's such a key word, the privilege to lead day in and day out. And Simon Sinek has another great quote that it's not about being in charge, it's about the people that are in your charge. That is absolutely couldn't be more true. And us as leaders, if our role is to do that, is to create a safe place, to excavate talent from our folks and coach and develop, and that is our key responsibility. The engagement's going to go through the roof. They're going to, as I mentioned earlier, they will feel empowered. That's also going to impact our customer because they're excited, they're performing at a high level. It's going to impact their coworkers. It's critical to know that it's not about us. It's about the folks that we have an opportunity to lead and develop along the way.
You've actually had quite a long career working in recruitment firms, global firms. What is it that you see that's different at Eastridge around culture and creating high performance teams and success internally and for your clients than the rest of the industry?
Sure. I've had an opportunity. I've been in the industry for, gosh, 16 years now. And I've had an opportunity to work for some amazing companies and some great leaders, but I've had a lot of different perspective, both large global companies and smaller companies as well. And what I feel is different at Eastridge as it relates to our culture is that every single person has a high degree of clarity of what good looks like all through the organization. They understand if they had a really good day or if they did not, and they feel comfortable and empowered to have the right conversations, regardless of title, regardless of tenure, because it's a feedback rich environment. And we see it as it's time to respect. We see it as something that's going to help our partners and our coworkers. And our role as leaders, the reality is that if we had one KPI as an organization, and that KPI was to increase the percentage of A players that we have in the organization, everything else takes care of itself. And that is very clear here because everyone understands what an A player means and what it takes to get there. And our leaders are committed to helping folks get there. But everyone has a voice, everyone feels comfortable and safe in this organization to make an impact, not only, but also for our customers.
Knowing the industry the way that you do, and knowing the way that you work culture into the success equation for your business, would you say that it's a competitive advantage for Eastridge?
I believe that culture for Eastridge is a competitive advantage for a lot of different reasons. But number one is that we align our behaviors to our values, not only internally, but to our customers. So when our customers are partnering with us, they know what to expect and they've come to expect that our service levels, we are rigorous about elevating the industry standard as it relates to the service that our customers receive day in and day out. And we don't deviate from that. And so I do believe because of our culture, and the impact that is a competitive advantage.
Great. That's great. Is there anything else that you wanted to cover in terms of that?
Staffing, because we talk a lot about not just filling orders or filling racks, but truly understanding our customers at a deep level. And it starts by us as an organization understanding how important our role is, not only for the customers that we serve, but the communities that we reside in, being a noble profession. I read a stat the other day that from APA, American Psychological Association, that 70% of the people define themselves through their work. And we, as a recruiting and staffing organization, have a hand in there. We help people do what they're passionate about, put them to work, not only in the communities that we serve, but across the nation. And if 70% of the people define themselves through their work, how could this not be such an important and critical and noble profession? Because that doesn't only impact how they perform at work, but their value is tied to it. How they show up at home is often tied to it. And oh, by the way, through that, you solve $1 million problems for our customers by way of great talent. And that to me is if everyone truly understands how important this job is and the impact that we get to make in the communities that we serve and for the companies that we have a privilege to partner with, we can't go wrong. We cannot go wrong.
Oh, I love that. I love that. In your mind, what are some of the greatest challenges to growth with your clients that you help them with, that they need you as a partner to help create success?
Our clients' growth is correlated to having high performing teams. And we understand that intimately as an organization because it's also true for us. And as I mentioned, we don't just get a rack and then just try to fill it and we move on. Because that tie is so important, we want to spend a lot of time understanding what that means and how that shows up day in and day out. And so we spend a lot of time with our customers really understanding beyond the job description, will it take to have someone be a high performer, understanding who their high performing folks are today, what makes them high performers, how does that impact the organization. We're going to ask a lot of questions and get very curious around what that looks like because it's important. And that's how we go attract and retain the right talent for them. After we spend a lot of time understanding that, we're also going to go on site. We're going to meet with them in person. We're going to walk the floors. We're going to do a tour of the organization. We're going to speak to some of their peers and not only hear what the manager or the hiring manager is saying, but what is everyone else saying? Why do they love working there? What's their employee value proposition? And we take all that, and that's what helps us inform our recruitment strategy. And then our recruiters go out and match that to candidates that value the same things by and large. But not only that, we have deep subject matter expertise by industry or by core competency to know that if I am meeting with a clinical research organization or a life sciences organization that is looking for a biostatistician, we have a recruiter that intimately understands that industry. We have someone that not only understands what impacts, what good looks like, but then aligning that expertise with the culture piece will create a high performer in that organization. And that's critical because it's so important for the client.
And you have actually in your name is not Eastridge Staffing Solutions, it's Eastridge Workforce Solutions. Why is there a distinction there?
Eastridge does not believe that we're just a recruiting and staffing firm, meaning that we just fill racks and fill orders. Our role is to partner with organizations and understand their holistic talent strategy beyond just temp or direct hire, but we want to understand what is your overarching goal as an organization, near term and long term. And then how does the talent play into that strategy cause? That's the piece that we can really impact. So we're looking at a lot of different solutions. When you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So our job is really to go above that and understand the holistic goals of the organization and then say, hey, these are some solutions that we can provide to help you impact that. You might need contingent workforce, or you might need an RPO, or you might need a direct hire solution, or in fact, a combination of something in between. And that's the other competitive advantage that I believe that we have as an organization is that we can also get very creative in crafting those unique solutions depending on the customer's needs. We're not cookie cutter. We're poised for high growth with our customers as a result of that because what they need today might change 3 months from now, 6 months from now. And we can move as quickly as speedboats, not cruise ships. And it's important for our customers when they partner with us because they want to know that we are with them along the entire way. And we have that great opportunity to be able to do that when we think about the company holistically.
And you actually have a strategic team. Tell me a little bit about the charter for that team and why, as an outsourced partner in the recruitment space, you have a strategic team. What's the role of that team?
We created our strategic accounts group about 2 years ago when I joined the organization. And the purpose of that was to really align with our key customers in our organization that are poised and have the opportunity to grow. And at the end of the day, our customers want to feel confident in their suppliers and they want to partner with companies that truly understand them. And what better way to create this group that is intimately aligned with that client? They have someone that's dedicated to that customer, not only from a service perspective, and not only from a single point of contact perspective, but now we're really talking about beyond the location in San Diego, let's call it. They may have 5 or 6 or 7 or 15 locations out of the country. They want consistency across all those locations. What better way to do that than partner up with them in that manner and say, hey, the great expertise that you get in San Diego, guess what? We can replicate that across all your organizations. And that was the catalyst of creating this strategic account team because we can grow alongside them and they can bank on a consistent experience across all their locations, across all their hiring managers, across all their talent.
I know one of the big challenges for a lot of your clients in the manufacturing, the industrial space is a lack of skill sets. There is a skills gap in the industry that's quite large. How do you help your clients overcome that skills gap?
One of our challenges that we speak about a lot, one of the things that our customers ask about and speak about, and quite frankly, what keeps them up at night, let's call it, is the skills gap. Not only from skilled trade perspective, but also the speed in which AI is moving and how that's impacting their workforce. So they want a partner that understands and can create solutions in order for them to help them achieve their goals. One of the things that I really love about Eastridge is that we have this program called GATE, which is Gateway to Obtaining Technical Expertise. And the reality is the workforce participation rate continues to go down. Every single time the job reports come out, that still either stays flat or ticks down. But the job openings are still there. People still need to create these roles. And so with Gate, we're able to expand and look again beyond the resume and look at transferable skills across different industries that can still guarantee success for that organization. And it's really widened the talent pool without compromising quality, without compromising the outcomes that the client is looking for, and increases a high degree of retention and productivity because now the candidate saying, you know what, I have now an access to a career that I would have never ever had access to if I didn't get to experience this certification. And we can do that virtually and we can also do it in person. And it's been huge in this conversation to help and tap and fix and support the upskilling, reskilling challenges and skills gap that we have today.
How innovative is that? You've worked in a lot of different companies in the industry. You've got a lot of different perspectives. How important is a GATE program?
Gate is, or a program for upskilling and reskilling like Gate is very important because we get to challenge a little bit of what good looks like and help our customers say, hey, you have your issue. To doing the same is not going to fix it. The talent was the same. So how do you solve this issue? How do you create this incubation of talent that you can grow within your organization? That's why this is important. And as a staffing company, why it's so important is because we need to continue to provide with solutions and not just hope to do the same thing and expect a different outcome. And so it's incredibly important today.
If somebody were considering hiring a company like Eastridge, what would be the number one thing, the most important thing that you want them to know?
If a company was out looking to hire an organization like Eastridge, the number one thing I'd want them to know or feel is the confidence that they would have in Eastridge to support their long-term goals, not just filling orders. And that to me comes down to an incredible, consistent customer experience that they'll see day in and day out, regardless of location, regardless of industry, and regardless of expertise required. That is consistent. That is something that we are incredibly passionate about. We want to make sure that they feel that day in and day out. And I would say that was the number one thing they'll feel with Eastridge.
So there's a tagline that you use in the company. Let's get to work. What does that mean to you?
We use a tagline internally, and it's really simple. Let's get to work. And to me, it's really simple, but very important. And it's a call to action, not only internally, but to our customers. Let's build the team that drives your success. Let's find the career where you can thrive. Let's connect opportunity with talent. Let's get to work. And so when we have that mindset of being biased to action, it's going to impact us internally and externally. And it's so simple, but gosh, we all resonate to it. We all gravitate to it, and we're all passionate about it. And at the end of the day, that's what it's about. Let's roll up our sleeves together as partners and let's get to work.